So if you've been watching this channel at any point in the last few months, you'll know we've been breaking down Dexter Original Sin episode by episode, as well as doing a final thoughts video encapsulating everything. And I thought it would be fun to put them all together in one supercut. So if that sounds like something you'd be into, this is what that video is. Let's waste no more time and get into it. Episode 1, and in the beginning, we open on a quick recap of the ending of New Blood, with Dexter having been shot by Harrison. The doctors miraculously get Dexter's heartbeat going yet again, and we get a flashback to Laura Moser giving birth, who Dexter fans will know as Dexter's biological mother. We haven't seen Laura Moser since, I think, season 2 of the original show, in the episode The Dark Defender. I wonder if we'll see more of Laura Moser in flashbacks later in the show, and maybe a young Brian. Again, that's just a guess, we'll have to wait and see. After that, we get the intro for Original Sin, which invokes the style of the original intro for the show, with the same logo and music. It's just an extended version of the one we saw a few months back with the teaser. After the intro, we see Dexter performing what appears to be a post-mortem or something. I'm not too sure, I'm not a doctor. This is some new lore to the show, as we learned that before Blood Spatter, our beloved serial killer wanted to be a surgeon, but unfortunately he didn't feel anything. It just wasn't gory enough to satisfy his taste. And right after that, we get to see our first shot of that beautiful original hairstyle that Dexter had. Okay, so little Easter egg here. When Dexter is told to think of something that makes him happy while taking his graduation photo, he thinks of the novel American Psycho. This is an obvious callback to when he used Patrick Bateman's name to order M99 for his kills. Well, a call forward, I guess, because in timeline-wise he would. You know what I mean. Then we get a scene introducing us to a bunch of younger versions of characters we love, such as Masuka, Batista, and Harry, as well as meeting some new characters like Sarah Michelle Gellar's character and Patrick Dempsey's character, who is the captain. I don't know if this is Matthews, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And we also meet Reno Wilson's character. Anyway, it's time for dinner at the Morgan's household, and that night we get to meet the younger Debra Morgan. The actress portraying her here is absolutely, brilliant. She nails it. I mean, Deb's first line has her cussing, so thank God we didn't get rid of her main attribute. Over dinner, the Morgans discuss Dexter's need to get out more, and the fact that being a surgeon seamlessly isn't going to satisfy his urges. At a careers fair, Dexter discovers his new life goal, that being blood spatter, and we see how much of a perv Masuka really is, even photographing one woman who ignores him. I really love how true they stay to these characters, but right now they do seem somewhat one note, so hopefully as this series does progress, we'll see three-dimensional rounded versions that we know from the original show. Dexter's surprisingly ushered away from the booth from a horny Masuka, who completely ignores that Dexter has just rightfully guessed that Miami has a serial killer on the loose, which we see confirmed from our Miami Metro sequence. Our prospective serial killer is a man named Levi Reed, who in fact is not a serial killer at all, as later confirmed by the episode. In this pilot episode for Original Sin, we actually get to see Dexter's scrapbook of serial killers, something brought up in the original show when he took on the Tooth Theory, aka Walter Kenny. As Deb busts in to force Dexter to go to a party, he wonders if he too will get a nickname. This is an obvious foreshadowing to the Bay Harbor Butcher moniker he will soon gain. When Deb falls victim to a creep at the party, Dexter quickly runs to her rescue and gets to use some of those mixed martial arts skills we know he learned at college and which were often used in the original series, much to the dismay of people like Dokes. Thankfully, right as Dexter is about to let his homicidal tendencies win on this rapist, he's thrown out because killing an unarmed guy in front of a group of people would certainly have put an end to his dreams of being a blood spatter and a blood spiller. Flashing back, we learn that before both Deb and Dexter were about, Harry and Doris Morgan had a child named Junior who drowned. This is new lore, and I mean, it adds some character to the dynamic of Harry and Dexter. I mean, this guilt clearly ate at Harry, and because he wasn't paying attention to his own son, which means when he does take Dexter in, it's for more than just his affair with Laura Moser. While on a hunting trip, Dexter admits to his father that animals just aren't enough anymore, and that he wants to start using the code. It is while on this trip that Harry's heart starts playing up, which we knew was going to happen based on the original series. Harry's rushed to the hospital, and eagle-eyed fans will know that this is the beginning of Dexter's first kill, the nurse, a woman purposely doping up patients to kill them. While investigating Nurse Mary, Dexter says that he has always had a kinship with cats, finding them to be nature's own serial killer. You could interpret this as a play on something he said in the original series about dogs not liking him, and more specifically, not liking what he does to their masters. We get a recreation of the scene in the original show where Dexter tells Nurse Mary Harry doesn't want the shot, and that gives us our first mention of the Dark Passenger in Original Sin via Michael C. Hall's narration. We see Dexter setting up the kill room for Nurse Mary, and the narration finally uttered that oh so iconic line, "Tonight's the night." I can't wait for us to see Patrick Gibson's version of Dexter saying this line. It's going to be so cool. Anyway, the recreation of Mary's kill is very accurate, right down to Dexter's raincoat ensemble and how he scrambles with her because she's inexperienced. Dexter finally goes through with the kill, but unfortunately misses Deb's volleyball game in the process, and this is the first of many times we're going to see our main man miss out on something because he just can't control his urges. But that doesn't matter because that iconic blood theme kicks in, and boy did I get shivers. Dexter hasn't yet discovered the art of dismembering the body and dumping it in trash bags, so Nurse Mary meets her burial by a group of alligators. This does technically mean that early cuts is no longer canon now, as in that version of events Dexter burns his first victims before discovering his love for the Bay Harbor, but Dexter did stick to one thing he had in his original ritual in the show, and that being a trophy. In this instance, it ends up being Nurse Mary's earrings and not a blood slide, but we move. The episode ends with Dexter getting a job opportunity at Miami Metro, cutting his horrible mop off and graduating from college, and Harry luckily survives his run-in with Nurse Mary. Episode 2, Kid in a Candy Store. Episode 2 picks up right where we left off from episode 1, with Dexter spinning in his chair, and we get this cool POV shot. I don't think we've ever experimented with something like this in the original 2 shows, so it's nice to see them trying something new. Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, whose name I'm just realizing is Tanya, gives Dexter a quick tour of the Miami Metro Forensic Lab, and he notes that it seems awfully underfilled, to which she responds that Miami has one of the lowest murder crime solve rates, which is a fact that we know Dexter later grows to love, as we see in the original show. Dexter takes a little look at the slides, and we can see the beginnings of a very important step in what would become a very regular ritual for him, that being the obvious cut on the cheek and preserving of some blood. Masuka calls Dexter a play on his name, this time Dexter Dream. This is something Masuka was known to do in the original show, so it's cool to see it happen here. Before the intro, we see a hooded man drag a boy into a room, much like how Trinity kept a boy in season 4 of the original show. Now, I'm not saying this is Trinity. Well, I sure hope it isn't. I mean, that would be so stupid. But it's just a cool little Easter egg, I guess. I mean, the kill methods seem to be awfully similar. I guess we'll just wait and see how it plays out. Harry and Batista and the rest of the gang discuss his previous heart attack, and they get onto the topic of the boy who's just been kidnapped, which we saw just moments ago. Patrick Dempsey's character spectates that it could be cartel related, and we get a flashback showing Harry being put on the Hector Estrada case, Estrada being the man who would later cut up Dexter's mother in the shipping container. On the way to a case, Harry proposes that maybe just putting murderers away will be enough to satiate Dexter's bloodlust, but we obviously know that's not going to be true. Dexter gets onto his first crime scene, and as we can expect, it looks like he's about to jizz in his pants. He says it feels like Christmas morning, and he's been a very good boy. We get a cool visual of the corpse wrapped up in a bow, not too dissimilar to the end of season 1 when he imagined himself being praised for killing people, which later came back in New Blood. I guess this idea of false imaginating in Dexter's mind is something we're going to be seeing at least once in each show. I wonder what they'll do for Resurrection. Unfortunately, Dexter is allowed nowhere near the blood and is put on a coffee run. I haven't really mentioned it up until this point, but the soundtrack of this show is banging. Yes, gone are the days of the Cuban music, but it's replaced with the welcome addition of some banging 90s tunes, which I'm never going to say no to in films and shows. Cut to Deb shopping with a friend, and she insists that Deb's brother has a nice arse, and I have to agree. Patrick Gibson, please call me. Dexter is rewarded for his copy run by being allowed to do some actual blood work, and we get to see our brainiac blood spatter analyst do his thing. Original Sin does something different in that it actually shows us a recreation of the crime while Dexter narrates. I quite like this stylistic choice. It differentiates Original Sin from the original shows and gives it a little spice up, something new, something memorable, something we haven't seen before. Dexter shows off his blood spatter analysis, thinking he's a genius, but it's unfortunately laughed at as everyone realizes how obvious it is that the gunman shot from a close range from the gunpowder on the victim's head. To say Dexter's ego is bruised would be an understatement. Harry explains to Dexter that they're just giving him a hard time because he's the new guy, and Dexter understands it, figuring that just because he thinks blood is amazing, it doesn't mean others don't need a distraction from the grim reality of the job. Flashing back, we see the first time Harry meets Laura Moser in an undercover drug bust. I don't know if I mentioned this in my first episode breakdown, but the woman portraying Laura really resembles her. They did a bang-up job with the casting, even if I was apprehensive when they first announced them. Once again, we see the kidnapped boy in the cage looking awfully like a shipping container. I don't know if this is purposeful or just a coincidence. The Miami Metro bunch take Dexter to lunch, and he orders his first ever pork sandwich, something we know he loves to eat the original show, even while driving. His words, not mine. While Dexter sits at the table, a man awfully resembling his brother Brian comes up to him and asks to borrow a chair. I'm not saying this is Brian, but I imagine he would be out of the mental hospital by now. I just don't know if we would have already been tracking down Dexter. Once again, the gang busts Dexter's balls by bringing him a pork sandwich with no meat in it. At lunch, Masuka presents Dexter with his first Miami Metro laminate. Dexter takes Harry's advice to bust the guy's balls back to fit in, but accidentally makes a joke a bit too over the line. right after saying maybe fitting in won't be so hard after all as well. Poor guy. Once again, we see the kidnapped boy and his captor hands him a light and some lunch. At dinner, Dexter compares Harry's need to smoke with his need to kill, and to say Harry finds it unnerving how Dexter can compare these two polar opposites of the spectrum and find them so similar is an understatement. They accidentally let some water boil over a bit too much, and we can see that this is where one of the stills that we saw earlier in the year comes from. Dexter does try to describe killing Nurse Mary to Harry, but he just can't do it. He says that blood work gives him much more of a rush than medical school, and we can start to see those first seeds of doubt in Harry about teaching Dexter the code, as he tries to brush it off and imply that Dexter is putting killing behind him, which we know he isn't. Dexter lays in bed wondering whether Harry was right, are his urges really behind him? On his horror movie collection, we can see another reference to American Psycho, as well as a copy of It, which is a film about a clown who masquerades as other things to remain concealed or get close to his victims, much like Dexter does. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but I feel like they chose that film on purpose because of the symbolic similarities between Pennywise and Dexter Morgan. Dexter can't sleep, so he decides to reminisce on better times, that being the killing of Nurse Mary. In the morning, Harry reflects on a photo of him, his wife Deb, and Dexter at the beach, which is a photo we saw them take in the original series, in which Harry first tells Dexter to smile because it will help him fit in. Flashing back, we see Harry interrogating Laura, using younger Brian and Dexter to get to her. Captain Spencer, who Patrick Dempsey plays, reluctantly agrees to let Harry use Laura as an informant. Also, we can finally confirm that I was now wrong. Patrick Dempsey is not playing a younger version of Captain Matthews. Harry and Deb discuss a fallout they had the last night at dinner, and Harry accidentally suggests maybe they need to move on from Debra's mother's passing. She obviously doesn't take this well. Dexter brings in some vegetables to work for his colleagues, but he quickly finds out that no one really wants vegetables. Who knows, maybe he'll try his donuts next. Harry asks Batista to take Dexter under his wing, as he is clearly struggling to fit in at Miami Metro. Dexter is sent by Tanya to fetch some files, as we meet our young Camilla for the first time. Dexter has a snoop about the files and almost gives himself a hard-on. At the court, the killer from the last episode, Levi, pleads not guilty, and court is adjourned. The judge calls Harry over and they discuss the kidnapped kid, Harry stating that he thinks that his working theory is currently cartel. Flashing back, we see Harry rushing home, excited to tell Doris he's got an informant, and we find out they've been trying for a child, unsuccessfully at that. Doris is beginning to think that maybe God just doesn't want them to replace their child, a fact we know won't become true, as they will later find Dexter and have Deb. But for now, drama is drama. Earlier in the episode, Debra's friend suggested pawning some stuff to get nude things she wanted, and Deb contemplates pawning some of her mother's old jewellery but can't bring herself to do it. So she raids Dexter's room, which is just wrong on so many levels. What an invasion of privacy. But we have bigger problems for Dexter, as she goes to sell his horror movie collection, but discovers Nurse Mary's earrings in one of the tapes. Batista takes Dexter out for the night, but when he discovers that Dexter isn't 21, he can't let him have his shot. Our boy isn't too bothered though, as he's much happier with his 2 pork sandwiches. I'd like to say I'd be the same, but I've discovered quite the penchant for alcohol since turning 18. Batista teaches Dexter to dance. Dexter then learns about an immigrant boy who came over and got in a bunch of debt with the wrong guy. His debtor accidentally killing the immigrant's mother, who turns out to be the same woman Dexter was struggling not to stroke one out to in the forensic lab earlier in the episode. Something tells me we're going to see Dexter get this guy. Back to the kidnapped boy, he seems to be going mental. As his captor hands him another meal, he pushes it back, which results in him getting his hand sliced. Debra tries to pawn Dexter's earrings, but luckily for him, they are fake, so he gets them back. But she does pawn a pearl necklace her mother gave her, for some sunglasses of all things. Oh wait, did I say Dexter gets his earrings back? Well, I fucking lied. Debra just gives them to her friend when she asks. Deb's pissing me off more here than she has in the whole of the original show, and I know people didn't like her in the OG show. Dexter comes in, having learnt his lesson with the vegetable fiasco, holding a box of donuts, and he successfully tells a joke that doesn't piss his co-workers off. Our boy is really learning the ropes, and Harry sure seems proud of it. One final flashback shows Harry dropping Laura off, where we see a young Dexter and Brian. And I'm sorry, but I've got to point out an inconsistency when I see one. These kids are very clearly way older than the kids we see in the original show, watching their mother get chainsawed. Keep things consistent, original sin, or just don't bother. The kid Jimmy Powell has his finger sent off to Miami Metro, where Dexter sees it and feels an innate connection. He doesn't know why yet, but we know it's because he watched his mother get cut up in front of him. And it's also the same reason the ice truck killer used the exact same tactic to get his attention in season 1 of the original show. Dexter wants to go after Jimmy Powell's potential killer, but he knows every cop in Miami is looking for him, so he searches for an easier target, that being that guy Batista told him about earlier in the bar. He even gets to mutter a play on the phrase "Hello Dexter Morgan" by saying "Hello Tony Ferreira." The episode ends with Dexter in bed thinking of his next kill, and we get this cool visual of him imagining the man's mugshot on the ceiling. Once again, I'm liking this experimentation Dexter Original Sin is bringing to the board. Episode 3, Miami Vice. We open on a press conference for Jimmy Powell. Everybody in the precinct is watching Spencer talk, bar Dexter. He's just disturbed that someone would go after a child, a trait he's had since episode 1, of the original show.
Children, I could never do that, not like you.
Dexter explains that the culprit probably used something spring-loaded. While Masuka is proud, it probably comes out in the worst way possible given the situation. We find out that Deb wants to become captain of her volleyball team to seal her scholarship. Unfortunately, she has some competition in the form of a rich girl using a pool party to sway people's votes. Deb senses a way to sway the public opinion, offering to get the girls their coke if they come to her movie night. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a way to get coke. While the group discussed whether or not Jimmy's mutilation was cartel crime, not yet Lieutenant Maria LaGuerta walks in. She almost immediately goes to Dexter for help, almost as a foreshadowing for when she fancied him for about 3 episodes in season 1. But Batista quickly sways in to try and secure her, an obvious precursor to the shortest marriage in the show. But LaGuerta isn't buying it. She says she doesn't fraternize with colleagues, so clearly she's not playing the politics game yet. LaGuerta has been sent to Miami Metro to sort out why they don't value underprivileged people like homeless and drug abusers. As Miami Metro has an inside joke of calling them no human involved cases, the precinct obviously doesn't take too kindly to her. Spencer already could tell Maria's a climber, trying to make her way to the top of the ranks, and thus enforces Harry to keep an eye on her. Dexter's on his first ever stalk, looking to take out Batista's one that got away, Tony Ferrer. Dexter decides to try and enact the next rule of the code, ensuring that Tony is actually guilty. He breaks into Tony's house to find some things out. He finds out Tony's leaving for a place tomorrow, and also what the contents of his fridge taste like. I like this detail. Dexter is sloppy. There's no way I could see him doing this type of thing in the original show, but on your first stalk, why the fuck not? Dexter thinks he's been caught when he hears the words, "Honey, I'm home," but when they repeat, he finds out it's just a parrot. Dexter takes the records of the people Tony has killed and does some research on Miami Metro time. This is the first of many hours they'll be paying him for doing his own work. Dexter needs to score a fake ID and gets it off Masuka of all people. Once again, he takes to using Patrick Bateman as his alias. A movie carries on for about a decade. Deb comes home with her friend who immediately tries to flirt with Dexter, but the serial killer, who's actually just a bit autistic, doesn't realise what she's doing. What he does realise is she's wearing Nurse Mary's earrings, and this scares the living daylights out of him. Desperate to get the earrings back, Debra manages to blackmail Dexter into scoring the coke for her party in return for the earrings. At dinner, Dexter is death staring Deb's friend Sophia because she has the earrings, but Harry mistakes it for him finding her attractive. Dexter fesses up immediately about having kept trophies, and Harry is fuming with him for having broken the first rule of the code, that being don't get caught, by keeping evidence. A flashback shows Laura, Moser, and Harry working together to figure out large buyers and work their ways to Estrada to imprison him and the rest of his gang. Laura seems to be enjoying herself, but I think we all know that smile isn't going to last very long. Dexter's out stalking again at the exact time that Tony said he would be on his date on his calendar. Dexter decides to try and get up close and personal with his victim. Very dangerous for a first stalk, but he's inexperienced, and we know he's getting off on this. He wants that gratification. Tony's about to leave, but Dexter shits himself and accidentally asks the man for money, knowing full well he shouldn't do that, and that it's going to lead down a slippery slope if he's not careful. But I think we all know that Dexter is fully intent on killing this man, and that he's not paying that money back, or anything else. While out shopping for a new pair of earrings to replace the ones Sophia currently has, Debra asks Dexter why he actually has those earrings. He makes up a lie off the cuff that they were meant for their mother for Mother's Day before she sadly passed away, and Deb buys it. Dexter's got what he wants now, so he owes Deb some coke. And obviously he's not going to get his little sister cocaine, so he devises a recipe which will imitate the properties of the drug without the problems. LaGuerta and Harry have a little conversation about homicide and Maria's piece when she came in that made everyone take a disliking to her almost immediately. Flashing back, we see Harry and Laura moving up the drug chain to try and bust Estrada. On the day arranged that Dexter needs to meet Tony, he obviously doesn't have the money. Tony pulls a gun and uses the same intimidation technique he used on the immigrant that led Dexter to him, that being shooting beside the head to scare. This is what Dexter wanted, as he was able to get the bullet and run tests on it. I like this match cut where they show the difference between Dexter holding the bullet outside and then inside with his lab clothes on. Dexter finds out he was right about the kidnapper and that he had used Jimmy's finger and cut it off with a garden tool, but he's not exactly pleased with this information. What he is pleased with is the fact that the shot that was taken at him matches the one shot at the immigrant, and so he knows that Tony is in fact now part of the code. Dexter reports his findings to Harry, and Harry is just disappointed to find out that the job and his one kill of Nurse Mary wasn't enough to satiate his needs. He demands to know that everything that Dexter does from now on, and Dexter agrees. In a flashback, we see Harry and Laura still moving up the chain while executing part of their plan. A man, Santos Jimenez, who also took part in Laura's execution, demands she get in a car. Harry and Bobby, Harry's partner on this case, tail the car that Laura is in. When it seems like Laura is about to get caught, she seems to smooth talk her way out of it, but then they drive into a shipping yard, and her wire cuts out. My heart was in my fucking throat here, I'll be straight up. Like, I know what's going to happen, I've seen the original show, but it still had me on the edge of my seat. That is good writing. Unfortunately, as it gets good, we need to flash forward. Deb is preparing for her party, and Dexter initiates the plan to get his earrings back. He gives Sophia the new earrings, and she has the old ones back without a hitch. Deb's party's in full swing now, and Dexter seizes out to go take care of Tony. Unfortunately, a woman wants to speak to him. He manages to luckily evade Sophia's advances. Remember the kid who's been kidnapped? We haven't seen him in a while, but he's finally escaped the box and been murdered by the looks of it. Earlier in the episode, Maria and Harry had a spat about witnesses talking to officers based on who speaks to them. Maria believing that Harry came off as someone not trustworthy to Hispanic people because he was white in a Hispanic neighborhood. She ultimately proves herself right in that she was able to get a witness to speak to her while Harry couldn't. Flashing back, and my blood pressure lowers immensely as we see that Laura has survived her first visit to the shipping container. You only get so many of those, and hers will soon be running out. But Laura has good news for now for Harry, as she informs him that she's gotten even higher on the food chain. Breaking into Tony's, Dexter still hasn't discovered M99, so he has to wrestle the brute. He sets the parrot free, which was a welcome surprise. I really thought he was going to kill it, but I guess he's got a taste for humans now, so animals just aren't going to do it. Tony wakes up in the sports place he and Dexter met, wrapped in plastic. After a rough confrontation, Dexter launches the ball towards Tony and cuts his cheek. It's a nice little nod to a move he'll later perform regularly, slicing his victim's cheeks open. Tony wakes up again, wrapped up in plastic on the floor this time, because shit is about to get messy. Dexter kills Tony and sends him off to the same place he sent Nurse Mary, but this time dismembered. He's getting into his final form, aka the Bay Harbor Butcher. He listens to Harry's words and dumps Nurse Mary's trophies, but doesn't look back in time to notice that his dismembering has floated back to the surface. Maybe he should have used some weighted bin bags. Episode 4, Fender Bender. We open on a couple roller skating where they discover a corpse hanging from a bridge. It's the little boy we were seeing teased in earlier episodes. Miami Metro get us onto the scene and Dexter is put off yet again. This is obviously because of the fear rooted deep down within him from watching his mother die as a child. Harry sends Dexter away to work on something else, and Dexter apologizes, to which he is told it's normal to feel this way about seeing a murdered child. He's finally feeling some human emotion, and frankly, he doesn't know how to feel about it. We cut to Deb, who wants to go to the beach with her team, but unfortunately Harry has taken the truck to work, so she can't get them there. Dexter and this police officer have a nice discussion about bottling up feelings, which is a bit too close home for him, knowing that he's doing the exact same thing, and it's what's causing his violence. Over on Coconut Grove, Maria LaGuerta puts Dexter on forensics. I believe this is the same place where Deb was working as a prostitute in Season 1. As they mentioned, this is the right place for sex workers. Dexter gets to work and makes an educated guess on how the victim was killed, which only pisses LaGuerta off, because she wants forensics and not hunches. When a coroner refuses to move a body because he doesn't want to get A's, Dexter is all too happy to get his hands on and move it. Back to Deb and her team. They're about to get to the bus to go to the beach when her rival Tiffany pulls up in a new car and doesn't allow Deb or her friend, whose name I've forgotten, in, instead driving the rest to the beach without them. Paranoid about Dexter's fear earlier at the crime scene, Harry rushes to Camilla to triple check all mentions of him have been removed from Laura Moser's case file. Flashing back, and Harry and Bobby are about to see Laura, but not before Bobby pisses Harry off when he calls him out for his relationship with Laura and how it will probably interfere with their investigation. Laura's babysitter is cancelled, which means she can't go to the bust. Bobby suggests the neighbours look after Dexter and Brian, but they just won't have it. They just won't watch Brian anymore. Something about going into the freezer and touching all the ice. Okay, obvious joke, but the real reason they won't do it is they just say he's too much. Harry offers to watch them. Back to Deb's plot, and she's going to buy some weed and is ultimately swayed into getting some coke too when she tries it and likes it. Apparently that love never dies out because she's all too quick to get back on it while being undercover in Season 8, as we saw. Wanting to blow off some steam after seeing Jimmy Powell dead, Dexter decides to take part in his favourite hobby, stalking a kill. Dexter and Harry talk, and Dexter tells Harry he needs to kill someone ASAP because he thinks if he doesn't, his violent tendencies are going to come out in ways he can't control. Even though Harry's apprehensive because Dexter only killed someone a few days ago, he hears him out. Dexter explains that there's this hitman, a contract killer for the mob, named Mad Dog. He's now masquerading as a retired fisherman. Harry tells Dexter this could be dangerous as he's going after a trained killer, someone who's killed hundreds by the sounds of it. But Dexter seems to think that he'll be okay. After all, he's a trained killer as well, is he not? Who else is going to fit the code more? Harry isn't going to allow it though until he gets some proof. Deb walks in the middle of this little meeting. She kicks off at Dexter for not telling Harry that she made captain on the team, and then kicks off at Harry for not giving her the truck. Harry explains he needed it because the child was murdered and that the beach is not important. She apologizes, saying she couldn't have known. She's getting emotional, and Harry realizes that her eyeballs are off the charts, which is when she storms out. Dexter's got permission from dear old dad to go kill, so now he's on the observational portion of the code. Once again, he just can't resist getting up close and personal. Dexter pretends to be interested in chartering the boat, and the hitman gives him a business card with an address on it. Dexter obviously breaks in to try and get evidence. Once he's in the house, Dexter is not being sneaky at all. He saunters about and uses the man's back scratcher. Dexter finds a shredded photo of a man he suspects to be a victim and knows he has to put it back together himself. Miami Metro are doing some work on the Jimmy Powell case. They discovered that the death of Jimmy was by an ice pick to the back of the neck. Truthfully, they've got no idea what this killer's motive is or what they're going to do about catching him. Spencer's wife turns up and they go to his office, where we learn that she cheated on him because he was never present with his family, choosing to pick his police one over his actual one. So, when she demands he takes his kid Nikki to a football game, he's a bit preoccupied with the killing again, just proving her point. Dexter decides to cheer the kid up in a scene I fucking love. It's just like really human and actually quite sweet for this serial killer. They bond over video games and chocolate, and it's great. I love it. Dexter explains his blood work, stating that the victim's heart was not pumping when he hit the ground, and using some cantaloupes to show how the blood went. It's cool how we get to see him recreate that style of evidence and like presenting it. I don't know what you would call it, but it's cool. I like it, and I loved it in the original series, so it's nice to see it back. Deb and her friend are looking to get into a club. Dexter finishes piecing together the shredded victim, and he gives him everything he needs. He discovers that this man is Mad Dog's next victim, and now that there's a life on the line, he's not playing about. Dexter gets asked by a cop if he has a brother, and he says he doesn't because he doesn't know about Brian just yet. In the club, Deb enacts a scheme to get some free booze, which ends up coming from a middleweight boxing champion. This guy in the club flirts with her, essentially saying she's got some balls for trying some shit like that. The guy has to split and gives Deb his card. Dexter and Harry have an argument once more about Mad Dog being too advanced for Dexter to go up against, but Harry ultimately resigns and lets him do it. Flashing back, we see Harry making Dexter and Brian some snacks. He comes out and Brian is torturing an animal by the looks of it, and he doesn't seem too bothered about Dexter having run off. This just doesn't match Brian at all in the original series for me. I mean, he very clearly loved his brother when he was little, so I just don't like this reimagination of him, where he just couldn't give a fuck about Dexter. It's made very clear that these two were made monsters after watching their mother die, and yet Brian already seems to be a bit of a freak by torturing animals and stuff. Call it lazy writing, call it an oversight, call it a retcon, no matter what way you slice it, I don't like it. Harry finds Dexter in the end anyway, so it doesn't matter. Dexter plans to kill Mad Dog on his boat while they're out at sea, but it goes tits up when he finds out that other people are going to be there too. Out at sea, Dexter starts to feel a bit envious about how well Mad Dog blends in with other people. I also think this could be the precursor to him using a boat to dump bodies. Dexter and Mad Dog have a discussion about killing people under the guise of foreclosing houses, and when things take a wrong turn, Dexter is able to avoid a confrontation when the other people on the boat catch something. Lucky guy. Deb calls the guy from the club and they go out. He finds out she's still in school, and to be frank, he simply doesn't care. Americans, is this normal? Because over here in England, you'd be branded an absolute freak for doing that. Harry gets home and hears the voice message Deb left to get away with being with a man, and he's just annoyed that it's not even a good excuse. Flashing back, and Laura gets home to find Harry asleep. He soon wakes and learns that Estrada now knows what Laura's up to and really likes it. He and Laura finally hook up. When Dexter finally goes for the kill, it seems Harry was right and that it was too dangerous, because Mad Dog wakes up before he's been fully tied down and attacks Dexter. He nearly suffocates him, but Dex gets the upper hand for a minute before Mad Dog ultimately escapes, and they're in a chase in the middle of the street. Mad Dog basically fully naked from being in the middle of being prepped for the kill. But before Dex can get to him, he's run down by a car. God, Dexter is bad at this. Episode 5, F is for fuck up. So, we open right where we left off from episode 4, with Dexter narrowly avoiding being caught by the driver who hit Mad Dog. Dexter has to rush a cleanup job, knowing that Miami Metro is going to be at his crime scene any minute. When all looks done, they arrive while he's there, and sloppy police work gets him off. Before we move on, does this blonde police officer look like Jenifer Carpenter to you, or am I being stupid? It'd be weird for her to have a cameo, but also kind of cool, so I honestly can't decide whether it's her or not. As the police walk off, Dexter couldn't look happier. He's clearly getting off on being nearly caught, like we saw him do in the Season 2 premiere when his bags were discovered in the Bay Harbor. Harry hears that Mad Dog got away on his police scanner, and he and Dexter have an argument, leading to Dexter being grounded from even going to work. He's been told he's not to use the code anymore, and he's back to basics, using training exercises only to relieve his fun. Harry goes to check on Mad Dog's body at the mortuary, and he gets told it's unlikely to go to homicide, which means Dexter is in the clear. Growing increasingly bored at home from being grounded, Dexter takes to eating some brownies, which were for Deb's volleyball team. While Harry is practicing for court, we get a flashback. Harry and Laura are trying to abstain from adultery to pretty poor results. Debra comes home and tells Dex he ate pot brownies, to which he shits himself, fearing that being high will put him out of control of his urges. He urges Deb to stay home to watch him, and she agrees, getting high with him. He tells him about her new boyfriend, and they get onto the topic of their mother's death, since it's been 1 year of her death coming up. They get honest with each other when on the topic of whether their mother would be proud about them, and Dexter accidentally admits that he's a terrible person. He's feeling some serious guilt for fucking up the Mad Dog kill. Dexter asks her how she would react if he had killed someone, and she jokingly chalks it up to him being high. Dexter gets to go to work again, and Harry asks him to fingerprint the guy who ran over Mad Dog, and he's naturally a bit worried that he's going to get recognized. The way Harry speaks obviously shows he's only making Dexter do this to call him out for saying that no one saw him. I don't buy this at all. Harry was incredibly protective of Dexter in the original series, and so now to imply that he would put his son at danger just to prove a point is ridiculously out of left field. I don't know what it is with original Sin taking characters who are obviously protective of Dexter, like Brian and Harry, and then changing them to not be just to fit a narrative, but I don't like it. It's not good storytelling. Dexter takes his prints and luckily hears that the guy saw nothing. He's off the hook. Maria gives words to the man who ran over Mad Dog about how our mistakes don't define us, and Dexter decides to take that as a cue that he doesn't need to quit killing because of one little mess up. Dexter sees Tanya watching a horse race as her horse has to be sedated to be put down, and suddenly he's got an idea he's quite liking. I think we all know where this is going, and it's in the direction of a serious dosage of M99. At the trial, a surprise witness is called out who turns out to be the woman from a previous episode, whose alibi had been discredited by Harry because she was stoned. Despite his right choice to do so, it ends up with Levi Reed being let free because the judge determines that Harry had made a mistake in his judgment. Dexter is off to see the horse, and he lets one free so he can get into the veterinarian's office. He nabs as much M99 that he can get his hands onto, and then accidentally walks into the horse's pen while trying to hide as the veterinarian comes back. With Dexter and Harry both tied up in their own issues, Debra is left to go to her mother's grave alone. She muses about the fact that she feels alone and doesn't feel like she can wait around for Dexter or Harry to be there for her anymore. A lot of people have complained about Deb's storyline in Original Sin, saying that it's quite boring and they don't feel like she has anything to do. But I feel like we're finally seeing it go somewhere and that Molly Brown has some stuff to chew on finally, which I'm never going to say no to. Dexter learns that Harry fucked up and let Levi Reed walk, and right as Harry finally turns up to Doris's grave, too little too late. He reflects about a flashback that shows him opening up to Laura about his dead son, and I want to quickly address some criticism I've seen about this new law. People saying that Harry having a kid who he didn't look after and who he let die by accident completely contradicts his protective nature and Dexter of Deb, and I have to agree to some extent about this and what people are saying about it, but I personally see this as the idea that the kid who died is the reason he is so protective of his future children, like a cause and effect type thing. Harry gets home in the flashback and sees that Doris is still up and is magically pregnant with what will soon be Deb. He is surprisingly quite happy about this news, even though it will definitely conflict with his relationship with Laura. Deb gets it on with her boyfriend while Harry drinks his sorrows. Spencer turns up to tell Harry that he saved his job, and Harry just can't find it in him to be happy with Levi Reed still walking free. A drunken and vengeance-filled Harry is about to take a shot at Levi at a party, but Dex gets the jump on him, sedating his own father. Harry wakes up on his own son's table and gets to see how effective Dexter is now that he's taking in all possibilities before a kill. Patrick Gibson even gets to perform Dexter's classic little forehead pokes, which brought too much of a smile to my face, considering how stupid of a detail it actually is. Dexter sets Harry free and offers to take out Levi Reed, saying that Harry made him for this purpose. Something about the way Dexter says that his father made him for this kind of hurt me a little. It's sometimes easy to forget how tragic and sad of a character Dexter Morgan really is. I mean, Harry was just a bit of a nutcase. Further proven by the fact Harry gives permission to Dexter to go after Levi, but not before giving him the tip of using smelling salts so he doesn't have to wait as long for victims to wake up. Again, just how dead set Harry is, and sort of malicious he sounds and seems in the way he talks to Dexter about this kill, just made me feel kind of sad again, like Dexter was a tool to Harry in this scene, and kind of in general as we move on, and not a son. Anyway, the episode ends with Dexter at his mother's gravestone, and we learn that when he was 13, Doris wanted to get him seen by a psychologist, feeling that there was something wrong with him. I don't know how I feel about this new tidbit of information added to Dexter's lore. How do you guys feel? I mean, there's always new stuff being added, and this fan base is very divisive, so I'm always interested to hear. Also, before we finally conclude this episode recap, I just want to point out that they keep putting Dexter in this green shirt, which feels very reminiscent to the kill shirt he wore in the original show, with the way the buttons are undone. Maybe it's a precursor, and we're going to finally see him don the kill suit in the final episode, but it might feel tad too fan servicey if they go that route. You know, like an Avenger putting on their suit for the first time. I guess we'll see if they even go that way. Episode 6, The Joy of Killing. The episode opens on Spencer's wife and child getting knocked out and kidnapped respectively, and I've heard some theories that Spencer is the actual killer, which would lend itself to him attacking his own wife after he found out about their affair, but why would he kidnap his own child just to kill him? So I think we can very firmly throw that theory into the ocean after this episode, guys. Anyway, Debra helps Dex to get some dress sense ready for their double date, and Dexter does some good work on a crime scene, but unfortunately no one believes his theory relating to the forensic evidence. In a flashback, Harry and Laura discuss the bounds of their infidelity because she's not happy with being the other woman, and Spencer's wife turns up to report their kid missing, and her new boyfriend kicks off with Spencer, causing a near fight in the precinct. While stalking Levi Reed, Dexter picks up some moves to use on the women, and flashing back, we see Laura go to meet with Estrada in the shipping yard. While listening in, Bobby tells Harry he hopes he gets his boy, Harry hoping too, both unaware they will soon get him in the form of Dexter after Laura's untimely death. Laura is forced to watch as a man has his finger cut off for stealing some of the money from Jimenez, and Harry panics. He's worrying that she's next, and is about to ruin a year's worth of undercover work to bust in and save her, when they find out she's actually just being promoted. Once again, it's date night in Miami, just like in episode 1 of the original show, and Dexter is demonstrating just how much he loves food by eating copious amounts of it and making himself look like a gluttonous pig in front of his date, his sister, and her boyfriend. Now, when I say that I relate to Dexter and that he's literally me, this is what I mean. Dexter gets a little too into telling them about his work, so he distracts them with darts, using the moves he learned from Levi Reed earlier in the episode. Dexter gets the same results as Levi Reed did when he pulled the moves too, but he seems to be enjoying it too much compared to how he would have in the original show. Dexter always said he never really understood sex and didn't start to understand it until the end of episode 1 of the original show, when Rita showed him herself in like that sexy outfit. I don't know what you would actually call it, but it's a very stupid inconsistency. I'm aware of that, but it is one nonetheless, so I do have to point it out. This is a prequel, and thus it should align with the original show. Any mess-ups should be brought up and discussed. Dexter takes Sophia home, and she wants to hang out again the next night, but he's going to be busy with Levi Reed, so he decides to tell her he's bowling. Obviously, this is foreshadowing for Miami Metro's bowling team, but it doesn't matter because she's not really bothered by his excuse, and she lets him go off. Flashing back, and Laura tells Harry that if she goes back in with Estrada, she's not coming out, which honestly just makes her death even more grim and sad than it already was. I mean, she could see it coming, and there was nothing she could do. She asks if Harry would send his wife in there once again, alluding to her distaste with coming in second place to Doris Morgan. And right as Harry's about to give her an answer, Doris saves him by giving birth. At the hospital with Deb in her hand, she admits to Harry that he knows she's been seeing another woman and that it needs to stop now that Deb is about, and he reluctantly agrees. But obviously, I don't think he's going to. We're definitely going to see more flashbacks in future episodes, which I'm glad about. The flashbacks between Harry and Laura have actually been probably the best bit of the show so far, and I know a lot of people would agree with me. Anyway, Dexter's on the stalk again as we see him go after Levi Reed. We can actually spot an ice truck driving past him. This lends credibility to the idea that Brian has been watching Dexter for years before he even reared his victim's head into Dexter's life. Now, is this set up for an ice truck killer prequel? I don't know. A lot of people want it, and they seem to think that the showrunners are lending us into the idea, seeing if we'll go with it, testing the waters and stuff. And if it happens, it happens. I mean, we have the Trinity prequel now. He's the most famous Dexter killer. Second place is Ice Truck Killer. Why wouldn't they do a Brian Moser spinoff? You know, I'd be breaking it down every week. Anyway, Dexter gets Levi Reed on the table, and Levi makes a pretty good point that Dexter is fast becoming Harry's henchman in killing people who get away. I've already established how I didn't like that Harry basically set Dexter on Levi instead of just letting things run their course, but I guess that's the way Original Sin is taking it, and I just have to live with it. Dexter gets very up close and personal with Levi on the table, and this is quickly beginning to feel like one of those OG kill scenes, and I'm loving it. Levi points out that Dexter is no different to him, and just because he kills serial killers, it doesn't make him better. The conversation they're having here is one we've definitely seen before in the original show, but to see Dexter first confront those feelings is interesting nonetheless. And just as Dexter is about to dispose of Levi Reed, his body parts have come to light, just as they did in Season 2, when they got up from the Bay Harbor. And there we have it, the cliffhanger for the 1 week break before Episode 7. Fuck. Episode 7, the big bad body problem. When we left off, Dexter was at his dumping ground about to dump Levi Reed's body, when loads of police had found his previous victims. Dexter decides the smartest thing to do here is pretend he's meant to be there, and flashes his ID. Dexter goes to take Tony's prints from his dismembered hand, but he's worried the partial prints could lead homicide to him. So he hatches up a plan to pretend that an alligator ran up to him and ate the arm and then nearly him. But I think he tempted fate here, because we all remember that famous scene where he actually almost gets bitten by an alligator in season 1 of Dexter. Anyway, Maria is pissed, but Masuka comes to Dexter's aid, rightfully telling her he could have died and to lay off. Obviously, Dexter can't dump Levi in the lake now, it would be too risky. So instead, he dumps him in a bin and waits for that bin to be disposed of by garbage men. I saw a lot of people complaining that Original Sin felt silly and sitcom-like, and you know what? I think I get it to an extent now, because I kind of hate this scene. Dexter does something even more risky in broad daylight to dispose of a body, while silly, quirky music plays. Yikers, not the best editing choice. Anyway, in captivity, Aaron Spencer's boy isn't stupid and is crafting a shiv to use on his captor. And at home, Debra scolds Dexter for not calling Sophia back after she blew him, and we find out she's probably going to get a scholarship. Harry and Dexter discuss the events I've just recounted, and Harry seems less pissed off this time, probably because he's dealing with the fact he just urged his son to kill someone, and he actually went through with it. Sophia turns up to snog with Dexter, but she mistakes a condom in the truck for being his and storms off. Dexter's not too bothered though. And Miami Metro are currently working to try and get Spencer's kid back. At school, Sophia tells Deb that Dexter cheated on her, which she obviously doesn't believe, and Sophia gets pissy when Deb defends Dexter. I mean, really, it's her brother, of course she's going to defend him. LaGuerta presents a possible serial killer, and while Spencer doesn't fully go for it, he allows her and Harry to investigate. Flashing back, and Laura doesn't want to do the sting anymore, fearing for her life. She tries to pull out, and Harry tells her that if she does, then she's going to prison, and Dexter and Brian are going into foster care. She says that that's what it's going to be then, and sends him on his way. But not before Dexter can run out, calling Harry his father. Yet another character I don't buy just ditching Dexter. In the original series, Laura is like this insane, loving mother, like ideal, despite her issues. Now you lead me to believe she would just ditch her kids at the drop of a pin. Yes, I know there is danger present, but I just don't buy that Dexter's version of Laura Moser would be like this. I don't know. But then again, I think that maybe there's an element of he remembers his mother like this in Dexter, and then she was actually like this in Original Sin. Because I saw someone saying that in Dexter, you can chalk up the flashbacks where he has the long hair and it's just Michael C. Hall in a wig as that being what he remembers, and then, Original Sin being what actually happened. I like that idea, so maybe you can apply that to, this version of Laura and the version in Dexter. But then again, maybe I'm just making shit up so I can excuse Original Sin for sloppy writing. Anyway, Harry pleads that he does still love Doris, and it's looking like they're going to make it work. Flashing forward, and Dexter is looking for a new dumping spot, and while he does, Batista manages to ID Tony Ferrer's hand based on the ring Dexter left on. Batista wants to investigate, but Dexter manages to stop him. Nicky Spencer's plan to stab his attacker goes he's overpowered. When the attacker goes to cut off his finger, like with Jimmy Powell, there's some hesitation. And we know there wasn't with Jimmy. It's starting to look like Spencer may be the killer, because why else would he hesitate? I know, I've been saying that I don't believe that it was Spencer this whole time, but starting to believe it is. Harry and LaGuerta go and impound the serial killer's car. While Dexter is looking for a new hiding spot, he imagines famous serial killers helping him for inspiration. I love this scene. It's so stupid and fun. When this was teased a few months ago, a lot of people thought he'd be imagining killing them, so I don't know if they're going to be happy with what we got instead, but I really like it. At volleyball practice, Sophia sells Debra out and tells Tiffany that they fucked her car. Deb and Tiffany get into an altercation, and Deb is sent to the principal's office. Harry catches Dexter using his Miami Metro colleagues as inspiration for a new dump site, and isn't very happy. Masuka solves Dexter's love problem with a pager code that allegedly wins over all babes, but instead it just gets Dexter told to go to hell. While working on Nicky Spencer's finger, Dex spots the blood of the potential killer on the box as it was shipped in. He gets to work on preserving it, and I think based on his expression on his face, he's just got an idea for a new trophy. LaGuerta and Harry are going to take a road trip to get their serial killer, or who they think it is at least. Flashing back, and Laura is brought to talk with Hextra Estrada. He tells her he wants her to be at the shipping yard on Tuesday, and I'm honestly starting to think we might actually see that Laura Moser kill scene soon enough. We only have a few episodes left, and we're clearly building up to it. But nonetheless, Laura maintains some facade despite saying she doesn't want to work with Harry anymore, purely for survival instincts, obviously. But it isn't a good enough one, clearly, because Estrada tells Jimenez to keep an eye on her. he's suspicious. Dexter investigates Nikki's finger and notices the hesitation cut, while Harry and Deb discuss her suspension for her fight. Okay, so remember earlier when I said that I suspected Spencer of finally being the killer? Well, throw that all out the window because it's flat out confirmed, basically. Dexter notices a little cut on Spencer's arm, right where the killer got his from where Nikki tries to stab him. And we got a straight up confirmation when we saw Spencer buying those meals that the kids are being force fed. So, yeah, you were all right, people in my comments. I was wrong. I bow down. I kneel. And the episode ends with Dexter making the same connection we just did. And now, in the next coming episodes, it's clear he's going to go after Spencer. Episode 8, Business and Pleasure. We open on Spencer giving Nikki a bottle of sleeping pills. And Dexter is sent to go find Deb. And when he tells Harry that he thinks Spencer is the serial killer, Harry obviously doesn't take it too well. At Gio's place, he says he has some business to attend to and asks Deb if she wants to come with him. And obviously she says yes. Dexter goes to the high school to ask Sophia if she's seen Deb, but gets no dice, and Sophia spends the whole time trying to impress Dexter with her new boyfriend. Again, he doesn't seem to care. We see LaGuerta with a man who turns out to be a young Miguel Prado, and I don't remember if it's established if they had something in the original show, but I don't care. I liked seeing him. The guy they casted for Miguel was really good. Anything for a bit more Miguel Prado, man. I loved his character in Season 3. He was gone way too soon, much like Dokes. This Miguel cameo, along with all of the other iconic characters we've seen returning in their younger forms in Original Sin, does lead me to believe that we could see a Trinity Killer cameo in these next 2 episodes coming up, especially with that new show coming out. It just seems like it's a poignant time to bring him back into the zeitgeist of the Dexter universe, if you ask me. But what do you guys think? LaGuerta comforts Harry about Deb, and a flashback shows us a scene I believe we saw in the original show, where Laura and Harry are meeting each other in a public park while pretending not to know each other. Unfortunately, they are spotted, which means Laura is going to be meeting a chainsaw within these next 2 episodes. Dexter is using the database to look for Gio's apartment to find Deb, and Spencer pushes every cold case onto him to keep him busy, which only makes Dexter more suspicious of him, because in his eyes, if he was so skilled and Spencer valued him so much, why would he not have him on his most important case, that being his son's? Dexter obviously ignores these cold cases and starts tailing Spencer. Harry and LaGuerta get to their serial killer's home to find someone has got to him first, that being the Tampa police. While tailing Spencer, Dexter sees him hand over a bag to a man, and he needs to know what's in it. So he tails the man now instead of Dexter, and unfortunately, he has other business he needs to attend to, so he can't gain access to the man's house. Unfortunately for Harry and LaGuerta, their serial killer seems to have been murdered 3 weeks before they placed him to have been killing in Miami. Flashing back, we see Brian giving Laura her iconic nail colours that he would then go on to paint onto the Barbie hand and other hands to give Dexter hints to come and find him in Season 1. And I find it so soul-crushing that Brian was the one to give his mother these colours that would be etched into his brain for the rest of his life because of what's going to go down. It really adds another layer of sadness to his character. And to make this seem worse, the cartel bust in and kidnap Laura, Dexter and Brian. While getting wasted, Deb spots a box getting carried into Gio's boat, and I bet my spleen that contains Nikki's body. And if it does, it means some of the people in my comment section that were saying the boyfriend is involved were correct. And I hope not, because the fan base has been pretty divided up until this point, saying that Spencer and Gio have been the killer. Like, deciding who. And a few have said Tanya, but I don't think that's going anywhere. But if both these guys are involved in this big bad plot, then it means that we've been right from day one, basically, which just says something bad about the writing of Original Sin. Anyway, Dexter goes to Gio's apartment to find his fiancée there, and he pushes past the Discovery to call Camilla and take up her offer to use the boat so he can go and collect Deb. While looking through the hundreds of suspects for their serial killer, Harry discovers the name B. Moser. He obviously recognizes this, and I think he makes it clear that Brian is our serial killer, which is something I think I saw in my comment section. Someone had predicted that, and I really do have the smart fan base, guys. What can I say? So, if you want to become this well-versed in Dexter lore and become really intelligent in that aspect, then you should also subscribe. Is that a good sub-push? I don't know. Anyway, Harry makes that connection too and tampers with Brian's file and then steals it. I think it's interesting new lore to tell us that Harry knew Brian was around Dexter all the way leading up until Season 1. What do we think of this being added? I know a lot of people really don't like how much they're changing and putting in Original Sin, but I don't mind too much as long as it doesn't mess with what we already have pre-established. Flashing back, and Harry discovers that Laura has been kidnapped along with the kids, and we get a shot of them stuck in the container, and it is honestly heartbreaking. Deb goes snooping in Gio's yacht, and he kicks her off and leaves her on the island. She's stranded, but luckily Big Brother Dexter turns up to save her, and after a chat on the boat, she ditches the bracelet Gio gave her into the ocean, and I think that's given Dexter an idea on how to dispose bodies. Obviously, this is his patented method in the original show, and if this goes the way I think it's going, it's looking like Early Cuts isn't going to be canon anymore, because if he goes straight to dumping them, it leaves no room for him to start burning bodies, and, which is what he did in Early Cuts. I don't know how much I like the idea of Early Cuts being, made non-canon. I quite liked the idea that Early Cuts slipped in nicely between Original Sin and Dexter, but it's looking like that's not how that's going to go, which is weird. I don't know. I have no clue what I'm saying. I'm just sort of spitballing here. But if they make Early Cuts non-canon, I will be annoyed. Previously, I've said that I wouldn't mind, but nowadays, I think I do. In the last few weeks, I've made my mind up on it. But what do you guys think about the idea of Early Cuts being made non-canon? Because it looks like that's the direction they're going. Anyway, Deb gets home and breaks down in this shot that I really like. I've already established how much I adore the experimentation that Dexter formula is getting through its cinematography in Original Sin. A SWAT raid takes Dexter to the house he saw earlier, and Miami Metro bust in, where they find the planted jersey that Nikki had. Spencer pretends to go off, and the confrontation results in gunfire. I don't know if I like this scene. The way it's shot, and the music, and the overacting, and the yelling, it just feels so un-Dexter in a way, if you know what I mean. I buy this scene in any other drama, but putting it in the Dexter show just makes it feel out of place. Does anyone else get that, or am I just being weird? At dinner, LaGuerta finds Brian's folder in Harry's bag, and now I have some things to say. This adds something new and just creates ambiguity for season 1 for the original series. Because, surely LaGuerta should have, spotted similarities in Rudy and Brian's appearances, even if he did look slightly different. Would that not have stuck out to her? I don't know. And maybe, surely she would recognize Brian's name when it popped up, when Rudy was outed for actually being Brian in the original show. It's just odd. Maybe we'll see an explanation in coming episodes, but if we don't, that's such a bizarre call for Original Sin to make, and it just confuses things. But with one final flashback showing Dexter having to watch people get cut up in Estrada's shipping container, we finish the episode. And what a way to finish it. I had shivers down my spine. This made my blood run cold. These flashbacks really are the highlight of the episodes for me and so many others, so I'm glad that they were put in. This one in particular is just something special to me, though, in the way it's executed, the way the blood splashes onto young Dexter's face, emulating what he would later do to his victims with the cut on the cheek. It's just mwah. And one final detail I want to bring up before I get onto the outro, because I forgot to bring it up earlier. These title cards have been getting lighter as we go on through the show. They started out black with a yellowy font, and now the one for today's episode was white with a red font. I don't know the meaning of this. I think it's just a cool stylistic change. Maybe that's what we'll see for Resurrection's title cards. It will be, white with red text, and that's what we're leading up to. It's a transition from Original Sin to Resurrection as we work our way. I don't know. What do you guys think of that idea? Ed Orion jumping in as I make this supercut of all the analysis. I actually have come up with something better. Episode 1 and in the beginning had a white and red title card as well, and so does this episode, Business and Pleasure, being the episode where Dexter is born metaphorically, and in episode 1, he was born literally. So this choice of a red and white title card is actually symbolic of blood. When he was born, there would have been a lot of blood, and when he was born as Dexter, the serial killer. So much better, way better analysis. I'm glad I noticed this while putting this together. What do you guys think of that? I'm glad that I have something, new to put into this, and it's not just a rehashing. Episode 9, Blood Drive. So, we open on Brian Moser playing bingo, and honestly, I was in awe at this scene. I wasn't expecting to see him in Original Sin in anything more than a cameo like we did in episode 2, but then again, he's been clearly becoming more and more part of the main story as the show goes on. Anyway, at the hospital, LaGuerta questions Harry about Brian, and he lies. He said that he stole the file because he wanted to see how he was doing after everything that happened to his mother. I'm surprised they actually addressed this, and if anything, it only creates more confusion in my head, because now LaGuerta knows more about Brian than she really should. It just muddles with Season 1's canon for Dexter, and wasn't really a wise choice in my mind. We could have just admitted this plot line, and it would have been gone, and we would have had to deal with it. But anyway, it doesn't matter because we flash back and we see Harry admitting to Spencer that he had an affair with Laura, and he begs him to search for her in the shipping containers. Spencer agrees and takes away Harry's detective shield, and now we have an in-universe explanation as to why Harry was in his police uniform when he finds Dexter. In current day, Spencer does more lying to perpetuate his story that he's innocent to his son's disappearance, and they do this edited thing where everything blurs around him in Dexter's view. And I know I previously said I like the different changes that Original Sin makes in editing and how it makes it more unique, but this one just felt odd. It looks off, like a fan-made edit. It looks like one of my thumbnails for this breakdown series, I'm not going to lie. Dexter breaks into Spencer's apartment to do some research, and we see a picture of what looks like another bowling team that Harry was on. And this looks like a precursor to Bowl Till You Bleed, which was Dexter's team in the original show, and a frequent excuse to go out and satisfy his dark passenger. Spencer gets into his apartment though, and Dexter's about to kneel him when he realizes Harry's in the apartment with him. Just as he's about to get caught, Dexter makes a lucky escape. In the morning, Dexter and Harry have a conversation, and we learn that Camilla's boat was called Slice of Pie, something pointed out in my comments in the breakdown of the last episode. And it's clearly a reference to her death in Season 2, in which Dex poisons her with a key lime pie, the perfect one so she can die peacefully. Deb joins the conversation and says she'll try not to date any other older men, but the heart wants what the heart wants. And this is obviously a little dig at the character of Lundy in Season 2 and 4, who was a fan favourite for Dexter fans. Anyway, Harry proposes that Debra go to work with Dexter so she can give blood for Bobby, who had been shot in the last episode. This time, we flash back randomly rather than being a reflection of what Harry is thinking in a current day scene, and we finally see the scene in which he finds Dexter and saves him, but leaves Brian. Bobby saves Brian, but we know how that goes. I'm kind of surprised we saw this scene so early. It felt like we were building up to this for it to be the last flashback of the show, because we know how everything goes from here. But no, we have more, and it gets interesting. There is some more stuff here to this story that we didn't previously know. Going back to Nicky, we establish he knows it's his father, and Spencer kind of taunts him, but masks it as a comfort when talking to him through that little gap in the door. Dexter gets into work, but doesn't wait with Deb in the bloodline and goes straight back into investigating Spencer and Nicky's disappearance. Tanya comes in and orders him to draw blood because he was pre-med, and the line for the blood drive is ridiculously long. LaGuerta goes down to records to investigate Brian some more, but Harry and Camilla have already tampered with the case files to remove any mention of Dexter, so she's off Harry's tail. This doesn't feel like a very good resolution to this plot line, but whatever. I feel like they just brought this in and had to close it up quickly so it didn't, lead in too much to future seasons if we get them, and obviously, season 1's plot of Dexter. Flashing back, we see when Harry and Doris attempted to adopt Brian and Dexter, and while Doris shows some hesitation when she finds out these are Laura Moser's kids, she still agrees. Deb is looking around Miami Metro, and she's getting a feel for the idea that she might want to become a police officer. Dexter gets Spencer on his blood drive table, and because both suspect each other of being on their tails, they're basically just digging at each other and egging each other on for this whole interaction, and it's honestly quite great. Dexter's taking prints off the bag Spencer was using to carry Nicky's clothes when Clark comes in and explains that he wants to give blood but can't because he might have HIV. Dexter does him a solid and donates his blood but puts Clark's name on the bag. Masuka comes in and tells Dex he needs to donate blood himself, and Dexter tries to get out of it because he's already given a pint, but he can't, so he's being forced to give another. This is going to create problems later in the episode. Flashing back, and Brian tells Doris that Dexter's hungry. She goes to make him a sandwich, and baby Deb starts crying. Brian tries to smother the baby, but luckily Doris saves her. Brian's forced to sit on the sofa until Harry gets home, and when Harry does, he tries to speak to Brian about what he did to Deb, and Brian just lashes out, smashing a window and screaming that he hates being with Harry and wants to go home. In current day, Harry does some research into Brian and realizes he's been at all the crime scenes of his victims, watching Dexter. Back to Brian playing bingo, and it's become clear he's playing with a woman who would help separate him and Dexter, and he takes her out to his van and clocks her, knocking her unconscious. Deb gets home and learns that despite the incident at high school in the last episode, she could still get into the college she wants to go to. Dexter sets up a kill room for Spencer in an arcade that Nicky mentioned to him going to, and he baits Spencer out with a $5,000 ransom, the same tactic he used on Trinity.
Most certainly not a pedophile.
Well, I mean, it didn't really help him catch Trinity, but you know what I mean? He gets used to using this move to, bring his enemies closer. Doesn't matter though, because Spencer's not paying that bribe and instead takes a gun. Harry visits Bobby in the hospital while he's in a coma and asks for forgiveness for not being there for him, and also asks for advice on how to deal with Brian turning back into Dexter's life. Bobby wakes up and tells Harry to save Dexter. Flashing back, and we see Harry and Doris give Brian away because they can't deal with the level of trauma that he has. Spencer turns up to where Dexter has lured him into, and after a struggle, Dexter manages to put him into sleep. That struggle coming mainly from the fact that he's given 2 pints of blood. As I said, this is going to create some problems. Spencer wakes up and Dexter interrogates him but gets nowhere because Spencer is still trying to claim that he's innocent. That is until he finally admits, once Dexter has a blade up against him, that he only did this to get back to his ex-wife. Dexter is startled by the sobering realization that one single incident, even something this small, can turn man into a monster. Spencer tries to use Nikki as a bargaining chip, saying that if Dexter doesn't let him free, he's going to starve, and Dexter cuts open one of Spencer's restraints. He takes out one of Spencer's fingers and promises that if he doesn't tell Dexter where Nikki is, there isn't going to be a hesitation cut on Spencer's finger. Spencer doesn't go for it though, so Dexter chops off his finger. Dexter leaves Spencer to think about what he's done, but doesn't realize that Spencer has got free. We finally see that Dexter's restraints aren't all that practical, as so many people on YouTube and TikTok have tested. Yes, I know these have already been cut, but you know what I mean. The point still stands. We even saw in the original show, people could get out if they wanted to. Miguel Prado was like halfway out when Dexter finished strangling him. Cutting to Brian, and we see him cutting into the lady from Bingo for separating him and Dexter. And the episode ends with Spencer getting away, Dexter on his tail, as we realize he only let Spencer free so he could get to Nikki and set him free. Episode 10, Code Blues. So, we open on Brian Moser, recounting his time in the shipping container, and with Harry to a therapist. He continues to account his time in foster care, jumping from home to home, never quite finding a family who could deal with his trauma, before ending up in the mental hospital. And I gotta be honest, this kind of hit. This really related to me in a way I don't want to get into too much on a Dexter episode breakdown, but nonetheless, it made me empathize with Brian in a way I never thought I would. I mean, the fan base already loves Brian so much, and to take him as a character and make him somehow even better and more relatable and more like empathetic and just a way better character, I didn't expect that from Original Sin, and yet they did it, so props to him. Brian's doctor had been selling Brian's drugs, and when Brian confronts him, saying he's not getting any more normal because he's not on them, he lashes out when he's called crazy, in a stance that feels eerily similar to when Dexter attacks the frat guy in episode 1. That was definitely a conscious choice in the way they filmed those scenes. I think to draw a parallel to the two, in that they're not so different, even if Dexter thinks they are in season 1 because of their kill methods. Brian asks if he's ready to go see Dexter, and when he's told he can't, and he can never see Dexter because he's a trigger for him, he lashes out and kills the therapist, who we saw Harry and LaGuerta turn up to question earlier in the season, giving us our explanation of how he died. Dexter tails Spencer right to where he's been keeping Nikki. Harry is with Bobby at his bedside, but LaGuerta turns up and tells him she needs him for a murder, and when Harry hears the method of killing, that being dismemberment by chainsaw, as well as who it was, being Dexter's old social worker, he knows he needs to go because he could catch Brian at the scene. As Dexter struggles to track Spencer in the boat, he's keeping Nikki in, he decides to draw Spencer out by causing a ruckus. At the caseworker's crime scene, Harry spots Brian and takes off, and on the boat, Dexter gets his ass handed to him by Spencer. Spencer runs off to try and kill Nikki by drowning him, but Dexter turns up and tries to stop him. Spencer gives Dexter a choice to kill him or save Nikki and find out what kind of monster Dexter really is. And while Dexter does really want to go after Spencer, he ultimately makes the choice to save Nikki. I would have liked to see a scene where Nikki recognizes Dexter as the guy from Miami Metro, but obviously that can't happen, or you'd have to explain it away. But I just thought it would have been a neat scene. Deb's at the hospital with Bobby and somehow turns him dying into a literal rant about everything that's gone wrong in her life. And as much as I love the Deb character, this feels both in and out of how she would act in the original show. She had moments of extreme selflessness, but also extreme selfishness in the original show. So I don't know if this fits in. It does somewhere in line of how she would act. I just felt like it was a weird scene nonetheless. Anyone else get that? Harry catches Brian on the rooftop and they have a really interesting conversation. And it's such a good scene to see Brian and Harry interacting and both kind of admitting that they're both in the right and in the wrong in this situation. I love this interaction, and especially how it caps off, with Brian saying he's not going to prison, and if Harry wants to get him away from Dexter, he's just going to have to finish what he started when he threw Brian away all those years ago and kill him. And as Harry goes to shoot him, he envisions young Brian and struggles to, which is a really great detail. He never held any actual anger towards Brian Moser. He just only started to when he came back into the picture because of his love for Dexter, and he was worried it would jeopardize all he had done to save the boy. He just couldn't handle how Brian was turning out, and this is a really good element to add to Harry's character. Nonetheless, Harry hesitates long enough for Brian to knock him out and flee. Spencer's broken into his ex-wife's house and attacks her husband and then tries to attack her, and we find out Nicky was never actually his son, something my comments predicted earlier in the season. I doubted you guys, and I was wrong. You guys are clearly smarter than me, because you were all right in saying it. I really have the smartest Dexter fan base watching these videos, and I love it. And if you want to join this fan base and become part of the people who get to comment and, prove me wrong every week when Resurrection comes about, then you need to subscribe. Because we have so much more Dexter content coming, as I said, with Resurrection in our midst, a Trinity prequel, and Season 2 of Original Sin having been announced. There is never a better time to be a Dexter fan, guys, and jump on this channel to watch weekly breakdowns of every episode. I'm on my journey to 1,000 subs, so it would be great to have you here to help. While dragging Spencer away, Dexter stops to watch the news briefly about the chainsaw murderer, clearly feeling some kinship and yet not knowing why. Harry wakes up to see Brian admitting that he's right through his blood, and he flees to go see Bobby, finding out that his friend is okay. Dexter finally gets out on the boat and kills someone in the old-fashioned way that we know and love, with plastic bags and dumping them in the ocean. As he himself says in this episode, he was almost complete. Since this is how Season 1 ends, I just want to quickly throw this, guess out there. Season 2 is going to end with him in his classic cargoes in Henley. That's my prediction. I want that out there now. So if it happens, I'm going to come back and you can tell me I'm right, presumably a year in advance, because they usually release these seasons every year. Dexter gets in and he and Harry discuss the night as Harry realizes Dexter ignored him and killed Spencer, and he's okay with it. He apologizes for not listening, and they have a really good heart-to-heart where once again Harry lies and reaffirms this idea in Dexter's mind that he was born like this and not made a monster. Debra and Sophia wrap things up, and I honestly forgot about their plotline. I hear so many people complain that Deb's plotlines in the OG show were boring and forgettable, and I never really thought that in Jenifer Carpenter's version of Debra with what she was given, but her one in Original Sin just kind of went over my head these last few episodes. Then again, I guess they had to take a back seat because they wanted to wrap up things for Dexter's story and not exactly a little high school feud. Batista and Harry are chatting, and LaGuerta hears him say that he thinks there's no serial killer, obviously trying to leave Brian to do his own thing after Brian spared him for Dexter. And I don't like that LaGuerta hears this. It just leaves more open for next season if they continue this story of LaGuerta closing in on Brian, and it just confuses Season 1 even more. I kind of hope they just drop this and get it over with, and in Season 2, Episode 1, they just leave it, rather than make it worse. But history shows that the Dexter showrunners really don't know what they're doing, with Seasons 5 to 8, depending on who you ask, and New Blood, depending on who you ask. Just really, they don't know what they're doing, so it wouldn't surprise me if come Season 2, they continue this story with LaGuerta and Brian, and it just confuses things more. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Dexter gets promoted and weirdly breaks the fourth wall with a little eyebrow raise to the camera. I don't like that, really. Dexter is not a character who should break the fourth wall, but then again, I think he did it in New Blood when he was telling the story about Wiggles, the clown, so I don't know, he's done this before. I guess this was just the first time I picked up on it. What do you guys think of Dexter breaking the fourth wall? Well, maybe we should make him a mercenary and make him like Deadpool. And as I say that, I just realized he literally is a mercenary. My Deadpool joke is ruined. Dexter Pool is already real. And yes, I saw the posts. They knew people were going to love this character and that he had to live. Bobby gets to live. That's right, just this once, everybody lives. At Dexter's celebration dinner for being promoted, Deb announces that she's going to become a police officer, and the series ends on a pretty happy note with the family all together, Deb and Dex and Harry dancing, while Brian watches on mournfully. Final thoughts. I want to give my final thoughts on Dexter Original Sin now that it's finished. And in today's video, I want to cover a bunch of things. I want to talk about my general thoughts on the show, an episode ranking, where it ranks in the franchise in general, because we do have 4 Dexter shows under our belt now, and my predictions for Season 2. Let's not waste any time, let's get into it. So, my general thoughts. Original Sin Season 1 is an amazing starter season for this new show. It took a pretty shaky idea that people didn't like, a Dexter prequel, and ran with it and got a home run. This thing is breakneck paced. Every episode is enjoyable, some even amazing, up there in top 10 Dexter episodes in the whole franchise. And while there is some hiccups with the LaGuerta knowing Brian thing and such like that, it makes up for it with amazing expansion of the Dexter lore through the Laura storyline and the Brian one. The Mosers really carried this show, and I don't even think we really realised till the end. but it doesn't even matter. This thing is amazing, and I honestly recommend it to any Dexter fan. So, with my general thoughts out the way, let's move on to an episode ranking. Episode 1 was an amazing opener, incredible. Definitely the second best opener of the franchise so far. It beats out New Blood for sure. S tier. Episode 2 was decent enough. It was an okay follow-up. The stand-up was definitely the Brian Moser cameo. It really got the fan base talking, which I love to see. A. Episode 3 was honestly kind of mid in comparison to the rest of the show. That's not to say that it's bad, but I mean, our other episodes are so good here that it just looks kind of mid. I'm going to give it B tier. Episode 4 is another mid one. The ending with, Mad Dog getting away, that was just, I didn't really like that. But I love the interaction between Mad Dog and Dexter on the boat. B tier. While I don't like how Harry acted in episode 5, the rest of the episode is really stand out in my opinion. It's pretty good. A tier. Episode 6 is brilliant. That kill scene with Levi Reed is wow. Having Dexter have to question what is different between him and Levi is really something we're going to see continue throughout this show in season 2. And we saw it continue in Dexter, and I think even in New Blood to some extent with Harrison. Our next S tier. Yeah, I don't like episode 7. I'm going to be honest. I know some people do. I'm sure a lot of people do. At the time, I was probably glazing it, but looking back on it, Dexter acts stupid with Mad Dog's corpse. Sophia is annoying. The Spencer reveal was horribly underwhelming. And the only decent thing was the Laura plotline progressing and the scene with Dexter talking to the serial killers in his head. C tier. Episode 8 is S tier. The Laura plotline takes center stage here. The ending with the echoing of Close Your Eyes Dexter in the shipping container. Wow. Absolute peak. And Brian finally gets brought in here. He really gets to stand out. And for the next few episodes, he is the main character. S tier. 9 is S tier as well. Brian is the main character here, as I just said. The I'm going to separate you moment is, Jesus, it's amazing. The scene in the arcade, I love the color palette of that scene with Spencer. Genuinely brilliant. I love all of episode 10, everything with Brian and the scene with Harry. I can't, man. It's amazing. I mean, we finally got a good finale for Dexter. Well, let's not jinx it. We are getting season 2 of Original Sin. There is a chance for them to mess up entirely, but season 1 finale is good. I have hope. S tier. Now let's talk about where this ranks in the franchise as a whole, because as I said, we have 4 shows under our belt. I say 4th place is Early Cuts. I know some wouldn't include it, but I'm going to for fun. 3rd is New Blood. This already has a reputation, and while I did enjoy it and will defend its finale to the end, it does get boring at times. 2nd place is Original Sin. Recency bias is definitely at play here, but I loved every episode here, and obviously I don't need to explain this, but number 1 is the OG show, Dexter. Right, so final thing I want to talk about in this show, season 2 predictions. I'm predicting we're going to see Dexter's kill ritual fully formed, or at least see him in the kill suit. I think that is going to be the minimum. Whether they go through the slide thing or the boat thing, if they don't, I'd put that in season 3. I think the more seasons of this show we get, the more we're going to see Dexter fully formed so that his kill ritual is, finished as we know it in the original show when it starts. I'm also going to predict a thing with Tanya. I know, a bit out there, but I don't know, I saw someone mention this, and it could happen. I think it would be interesting. We have some interesting dynamics and stuff and scenes in season 2, and also we know our boy loves a blonde, so I don't know, maybe she dies in season 2, and it creates like this empty hole, and we get more of a reason as to why he ends up with Rita and Lumen and Hannah and such. I don't know, just more of a chance for them to expand the lore of the show better than they already have. And I predict a decent finale. I know, probably not a good idea to predict this. It might be jinxing it because, we've had 2 bad show finales. Let's go 3 for 3. But I don't know. I have faith. They seem to finally know what they're doing and stuff. So let's have it. I'm going to predict that. Finally, I'm going to predict that they're going to continue the LaGuerta investigating Brian thing, which will fuck up season 1's canon. But it seems like something the writers here would do. And I've given them enough positives. I need to mention that they're a bit shit at times. And that, something is bound to go wrong in this show. It always does with the Dexter shows. So yeah, that's my predictions for season 2. And that is the end of this supercut of all my Dexter Original Sin videos. If you did enjoy, please like and comment and tell me what other content you want to see, because I've run out of ideas, to be frank. And thank you so much for sticking around this long throughout this whole video, because I know it's long. And if you did and you're not subscribed yet, why not? You clearly enjoyed me enough to sit around for 70 odd minutes. And quickly, before I go, I want to apologize because this video is late. That's what I get for expecting to render a video that is 70 plus minutes in less than 24 hours. Yeah, I always had these problems with rendering stuff and, putting out these long videos. It is my own fault. I never thought I'd have to,
apologise this much about late content. I've learnt my lesson. From now on, videos come out when they come out. But nonetheless, thank you so much for sticking around and being patient with this being late and stuff. Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll hope to see you next time. Goodbye.